immensely proud of Ithaca and all the things that it has to offer.
In this day and age, we have a lot of mass production where the individual who produces it has no clue as to where it goes or care. And the farmer's market gives an opportunity for an individual who maybe does care.
People selling produce, people selling crafts of all kinds, people selling food to the people who are shopping. It's timeless. And that's a big draw for me.
In the new agriculture, there's a primary emphasis on really meeting what the consumer needs. Less emphasis on commodities, government support, greater emphasis on meeting a need within a local community context.
I think we've always looked for a high quality, and I think that's why we juried. Food, I think, is, you're trying to find something unique, and one of our rules is, you don't just slap a hot dog into a bun and sell that at our market. You have to create something, actually be involved in the process of making that.
But I don't know if we would say, we try to even project the image that we're like professionals and stuff like that. We try to be real people making real products, selling to people who live, that are our neighbors, friends, and family.
A lot of the vendors I've watched over the years started with a hobby, and it's now their full-time business. So I thought that was one of the nicest things about the market to me as a newcomer.
A lot of the things that the board has been working with were things that were set down as rules years ago when it was much smaller, and some of the issues that we're dealing with now didn't exist then.
We very much desire to be a community resource where people want to come and enjoy the market, but also make it a facility where when the market's not actually in session, as it were, people would enjoy the park-like setting.
The energy, the excitement, the freedom to disagree and to debate things and to try new things. Those to me are what makes Ithaca Ithaca. And the farmers market in many ways encompasses large parts of that. I guess, to me, Ithaca, part of Ithaca is a sense of community. And that you really do see at the farmers market. I mean, if you go down there and you spend 3 hours, I guess it'd be an interesting study to count how many times you see people hugging each other at the farmers market on a Saturday morning. That's the sense of community that Ithaca has. People just hug people at the farmers market. It's a natural thing to do. The only time they don't is when their arms are too full.
Is the market important to you, would you say?
Yes. First, it's a wonderful community thing, and second, the fact that they stick to this 30-mile radius of farmers and people who make things. And I think it's a wonderful thing.
I think a lot of the values that have driven vendors to become vendors and do business the way they do, I think strikes a chord with a lot of people in Ithaca.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I was saying. Ithaca's view of itself, is wanting fresh vegetables and local produce, a sort of we band together in a sort of liberal social sense of if we all count on each other. We don't need the big conglomerates. We don't need the the outside interests. We can do it ourselves. And in that sense, you're right. I mean, it was a perfect marriage.
There was a time when there was no market at all, but he always, I think, wanted it to be start up again. And I think he probably talked to people that he knew, and he tried to keep that idea alive and get it going again if possible, because he felt there was a need for it. And there was not only a need for the people who raised gardens, but there was also a need for the people who wanted to purchase. So in that way, I think he was committed to the past and the way people lived in the past. That they lived closer to the earth and they lived with simpler things in their life. They didn't have to have a lot of things to make it go. I like to be working with the earth. I like to be doing things that really link the human being to the natural forces, to the natural world. So for him, it would have been absolute torture to put him in the job in a factory.
The thing that we felt most strongly about was that everything had to be grown by the person selling it, or the craft had to be made by the person selling it. Because one of the problems with farmers markets is that they become commercial, so they drift so easily into bringing things down from the Syracuse wholesale market, or bringing in flea market, so that they shift. This was the thing we were trying to avoid, that it not shift from a farmer's market to a flea market. And there was very strong feeling about that.
One of the things that is very neat about our market is it started out with farmers wanting a place to sell their produce, and they made certain rules. And those rules have come up through this market for the last 25 years. And one of the biggest unique things about our market is when you buy something from a member in our market, that person produced it. Be it produce, baked goods, or craft. They have produced it. And that is one of the most unique things in any market that I have visited or heard about, because a lot of them let people buy and resell. So it's very unique, and that's one of the founding threads of our market.
I certainly know that the farmers market wouldn't exist unless vendors 25 years ago had the guts to put something together and stand down there when they sold $25 worth of stuff and then come back week after week after week.
We keep a daily log. We enter the weather and what we've done during the day. And this is August 18th, 1973. Up at 5 a.m. to pick vegetables for farmer's market. Left for market at 7:30. Reached lot 10 minutes before 8. Set up by 8:30. Market a huge success. We took beets, shallots, leeks, Swiss chard, green and red. Many herbs were sold out by 10:30. Good sellers were the yellow Dutch shallots at 65 cents a pint. 10 pints sold. We took in about $25 from all the sales. Home by 11 o'clock. About 30 growers set up stalls.
Was that the first day?
That was the first day.
This is essentially where it all started on a Saturday morning here. I remember it was yesterday when Red BB came to us and he said, well, I've given the farmers market people permission to use the parking lot over there. And we were just, of course, we were hoping those people would come over to our store and shop after they got, and which they did. I mean, it benefited us. And actually, we were sorry to see them leave. It took up a lot of parking places, but it was great. It was great. We saw somebody's idea take hold and grow.
That was the back to the land period. Lots of people were moving to the country to grow vegetables. And if you have a garden and grow vegetables, you always grow too much. We were all on an equal level when we started. We all had gardens. We were all gardeners. It was a very, very warm, friendly, easygoing kind of arrangement.
You hear about farmers market in different areas. This is the way they did, you know, that farmers used to bring their chickens in live, sold them to people. They took the live chickens and walked down the street with them. And those are things that are gone forever, but we still want to be reminded that of what the past has been, I think. That was a lot of fun. And I've got a lot of good memories from it. One thing, kind of a funny one, I'll always remember. My mother always, every year, had fresh air kids come up from New York City, and we always had one or two fresh air kids here. And we had this one boy that we would pick the feathers off of the chickens, and we were sitting outdoors doing that, and all of a sudden he's going, "She loves me not, she loves me not." And I don't even know if kids today know how we used to do that with the daisies. We used to pick the pebbles off. She loves me not. And this kid is going, she loves me not, she loves me, she loves me. One feather at a time. And I'll always remember that. That's one of the things that stuck in my mind.
What do you think happens if we do forget?
Farmers market represents that.
I think they still do, yes. I think they do. I don't know, I think the spirit alive a little bit. But maybe this is part of her.
Maybe part of the essence is that people make it all, but the bread is made by their hands. You know, the pottery is shaped by their hands. The carrots are grown, planted, and dug up by these people's hands, their blood, sweat. That produces a product with an energy unlike anything.
We did I don't know if Linda mentioned this, but when we started, we had one table for people who didn't have enough to sell, to rent a booth. So that this table was little bits from everyone, from anyone who didn't have enough to sell, to rent a space. But that didn't last very long.
How much energy do you have to output for this sort of lifestyle?
Oh, good question. In ergs, in horsepower, in psychic energy, it requires a tremendous amount of energy because we're always on the move. That's what makes it all worthwhile. Oh, I love it. So much better than sitting behind a desk watching the clock. And, there's a sign on the wall, but she has to be sure. 'Cause you know sometimes words have two meanings. That's the short version.
I guess it's the personalities of people around here. They're much easier to deal with than a sterile countertop, kind of thing.
It's also good to support the local people.
Oh, I like the quality of the fresh vegetables. Stuff you buy in the store is shipped and it takes longer to get there.
First, I really enjoy supporting the local farmers and keeping my money within the community rather than spending it at the large supermarkets.
Probably sell more at the farmer's market than to any individual supermarket. And it's definitely the most fun and most rewarding and highest profit margin compared to wholesaling.
You know, people who are there are kind of taking a risk. They are being themselves, which is risky. A certain amount of, you put something on the line when you invest a fair amount of energy in setting up shop down there and expressing yourself creatively. And I like to be with people like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like talking to people and telling them about what I do, but ultimately what I really want to do, I just want to make furniture.
There's probably as many down here with PhDs as there are with high school education.
How long will you keep selling?
Have no way of knowing.
I have a patch of strawberries in here. It's about 1/3 of an acre. And I'm going to be planting another 1/3 of an acre. See that plot ground?
Mm-hmm.
That's gonna, the strawberries are here, and when the weather breaks, in they go.
We like to come to Ithaca. We come twice a month or so. And this market is just great because I understand that everything is supposed to be grown by the people who are selling it, and that a lot of it is organic, and that's important.
We're actually looking for rhubarb for some wine for a friend of mine who's making rhubarb wine, so that's what I'm doing here.
My family will come here soon, so I will bring them to come down here. They still in Cleveland.
Another step in this was that the city was not interested in the farmers market at all when we started. They weren't interested in supporting it or in being involved with it. But then after it got started and it was doing well, then it was a problem for them about our using public land, because we were a private organization using public land. But we did use the hangar theater lot and then the old runway, which is now the marina.
It was a balance between wanting to have the farmers market and wanting to have all the things that the farmers market meant, while at the same time not unduly favoring the market over a lot of other people that come to the city with a lot of other legitimate requests for worthy projects.
So, like true nomads, we ended up in the back of Agway, off the Commons, out behind Cornell, I mean, for part of the season.
When we moved to the space beyond the station restaurant, then some of the big growers came in, and then they wanted it much more businesslike. They wanted it to move. They wanted to sell.
A lot of the internal discussions in the market was this tension between the sort of loosely run cooperative where, there's nobody, as a small business person myself, there's nobody who's more independent and more sort of, narrow-minded, I'm going to do it my way or no way, than a small business person. Well, here you had a cooperative of 100 small business people, all with that same attitude.
To these people, they put more than their time in. It's almost they put their sweat into the market. So these, what you might and I might consider to be less significant issues, became very significant to them, and I think it was based on a desire to make the market the best it could be. And I think that desire kept the market going, rather than, oh, we'll just do it whatever way works, and it doesn't matter if it's the best way or not. When you run an organization that way, it tends to fall apart.
I think it's like anything. You can go year to year. You can go kind of slipshod or whatever. You know, kind of just make it work. You can settle for and make it work on some level, or you can be committed to what you're doing as a market, which is what I see as happening. Becoming really committed to wanting a long term, and there's a price to be paid if you want that security. If you want to have a long-term lease with the city of Ithaca, there's a price to be paid. We pay the city rental, and that requires, you know, certainly the fees are higher than they used to be. But if you're serious about the business that you're doing, I guess that's what it became. It became a sort of like a hobby thing. It became a serious market. And if you're serious about what you're doing, the cost involved, financially, the cost involved to participate in that market is still very, very small.
I was going out for a run that afternoon, and just almost by accident, I was thinking about, you know, geez, where the hell can we put the farmers market? And I decided to take a shortcut over to Stewart Park through an area that was DPW storage. And I got to this section there, and I was stopped because you can't cross the creek there. I had guessed that maybe I could hop across the creek, but it was way too wide. And so I was standing there on the site, and I thought, God, this is a great site. Why is it being used to store pipes? And then, you know, like 2 seconds later, I thought, well, this is where the farmers market could go.
We did have another choice. We looked at a place near where I think it's where the Science Center is, or very near where the Science Center is. For a while it was going to be there, and I was, I guess because of the friends, I went down with some of the vendors and we talked about the pros and the cons.
One of the things that finally fell out is a lot of people who put a lot of effort into making the first steps became alienated in the process, and this is not uncommon. It happens, and people take on leadership roles, and people who don't oftentimes feel left out of the process, so fractionization started to take place within the market.
That evening I went to their meeting, which was being held across the way in the Cooperative Extension on the other side of Route 13 from where the site is now. And I told them about it. I described the site to them at their meeting. We immediately adjourned the meeting, right then and there, adjourned the meeting, and en masse went over to the site and started wandering around. And to this day, I remember James saying, well, we could do this here, and we could do that there. And you know, it was very difficult to imagine what that site could look like. And yet, the Farmers Market Board, without hesitation, you know, saw the possibilities. And James was just beside himself with thinking about what could have been done there. And we went back to the meeting room, and before we left that night, we had decided that we were going to go to the city and ask if we could, you know, get that site given to the farmers market for their permanent home.
There were meetings where we got public, where we packed to overflowing the common council chambers there, and had police down there and picketing going on over supporting the farmers market.
And I do remember when the topic came up, the place came up, it wasn't called Steamboat Landing anymore. That name, by the way, was given to the market by Margaret Hobby, who was the director of the DeWitt Historical Society at the time. She remembered that that's what that area used to be called, and I think it's a wonderful name.
I worked on this. I really struggled with it a long time, and looked at all our photographs and bird's eye views and maps, and finally worked out what I thought had happened. And that happened to be just the time that the farmers market became interested in that site. So we were able to present them with all this research, which of course they used to market the site, and ended up calling it the Farmers Market at Steamboat Landing.
From about 1820 or so on, 1820 was when the first steamship was built here in Ithaca, only 13 years after Fulton invented the steamship. And from that time through about 1907, the steamship transportation, both of goods and agricultural products and people, was really big business here in Ithaca. The steamships would go the full length of the lake, and a lot of ferry boats that went all the way up and down the lake, and also back and forth across the lake with passengers. I was reading the other day that they said that when they'd be able to get the ferries here on Cuba Lake, it's something like knock 2 to 3 days off the trip between New York City and Buffalo, because they could get on boat here and go up to the northern end of the lake.
I know the boat down there is not a steam launch, but nonetheless, I can visualize the whole thing.
As far as we know, it's the first place where trading between white settlers took place. A man named Lightfoot, we don't know his first name, but a man named Mr. Lightfoot, probably from the Schenectady area, would come to Ithaca by boat, and he could go almost that whole distance by boat. He would come and set up a little stall just about where the steamboat landing is now, and sell his wares from there. He sold things like coffee and tea, crockery, dry goods, hardware, gunpowder, and liquor.
People selling produce, people selling crafts of all kinds, people selling food to the people who are shopping. It's timeless. It's been going on for thousands of years, and that's a big draw for me, because I'm just into the history and real life.
We had 5 bulldozers and a track hoe, several D9s, and we started in very early that first Saturday morning, and by the end of the day, all of the holes had been filled and all of the revetments had been broken down. The site had been prepared for them to start putting up the market that particular week, because we were going to occupy at least a portion of it the following Saturday.
But for a while, we all wondered if this would work, because there were huge piles of gravel and dirt, and it didn't look like a very conducive place for the market at that time. I remember it very well.
Mostly market members down here, but a lot of community members would show up, usually often just when you needed them. Carpenters, and some people would just show up again for one person had a transit, and he and his wife or girlfriend would just show up Sunday morning and shoot all the post holes we had poured the night before and leave a list behind and go. And it's like, that was their job. They came and did it every time we went through. They were just from the community. I remember a carpenter who came and tried one of these difficult cuts on the valley rafters of these cross gables, which had 2 different compound angles and stuff. And I remember him heaving a 12-foot board off the top down to the ground when it didn't fit. He came down that day, and we were glad to have him, because that was John Golay.
I've never been to any place that had this kind of mellow scene and nice physical location, and the water, nice architecture. Steve Gibeon, the architect, did this as a friend, so.
People just show up from the community, because I think the community feels like it owns the market.
The architecture of the market looks like old St. Peter's, which I don't know whether you realize that, but it really looks like an early Christian church. And I love that. I love the way it looks when it's totally empty. And you can really see how it's constructed.
yeah, it was, being part of something moving, going, kind of a high.
And I think it was a little like, you buy your new house and you have your home. It was the market had a home.
Yeah, I think everybody was just so happy to have this site that really was a source of a lot of enthusiasm. That was, of course, has always been tempered by those who thought that spending too much money on facilities would lead to too high costs for the vendors, for the stalls, and drive some people out of business or not allow them to participate.
You talk about value. Its value, to me, is to the community. It is a community institution.
I would personally, I liken it to the town square. I've always thought it should be like the old-fashioned town square. It should be the center of town. You should be able to go down there, find out what's happening.
It's more than just a business. It becomes a social event. It's a cultural event. It's something that is a part of the fabric of the city.
And the market we have is an exceptional market.
There's a lot of aesthetics, collateral, secondary things that happen which can't be accounted for in neoclassical economics.
Not that this market is the end-all, but it's another important piece of the fabric of our community that would be noticeably missing if it weren't there.
It's the community gardens. It's the Ithaca Farmers Market. It's regional access. It's Finger Lakes Organics. It's Green Star. It's a highly educated community. It's a highly avocational community with skills, community with interest in food and gardening and crafts and art and entertainment. Forget that one.
And it adds to the warmth, it adds to the strength, the cohesiveness, the longevity, and that's what life's all about. I mean, that's the essence of it.
Just something that we don't want to forget about. It's a good thing.
And you can't. It's hard to quantify that. It really is. I think it would ultimately frustrates economists to no end. And since they can't account for those things, they disregard them. They're not in the calculus.
Getting you close up. Oh no, that's terrible. I'm not an object. No.
Farmer's market is here for you. It's a neighborly thing to do. Steamboat landing is the destination.
Just the yeah. Yeah, exactly. Just that you always run into a bunch of people and there's great food to buy and it's just fun. They always have music and I don't know, I love the colors of it. Like this reminds me of being in an open market, which you don't get to see that much in the States. Like you're always going to the supermarket and sort of going up and down aisles and that kind of thing. So this is a lot more fun.
Farmer's market is here for you. It's a neighborly thing to do. Steamboat landing is the destination. Half a mile from the old Lehigh station. Locally crafted and locally grown. Upstate New York's harvest home. It's such a neighborly thing to do. The Ithaca Farmers Market is here. It's a neighborly thing to do. Steamboat landing is the destination. Half a mile from the old Lehigh station. Locally crafted, locally grown. Upstate New York. Ithaca Farmers Market is here for you.